Okay, I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, August 16th, 2011 to order. Next is the approval of the July 11th committee minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Item 3 is the report on the audit status.
Madam Chairman, what I'd like to do is actually cover agenda item 3A and 3C together, if that's okay. Because I guess for the first year, Crossland Associates is doing the city's audit, and they actually came in right around July. They stayed about a week and a half, and they actually come, they look at like our policies and procedures. So they completed that, and they'll actually be back the last week of September and through the 2 weeks of October. And what they'll do then is they'll actually look at the final financial numbers. So what we'd like to do tonight is to actually let you see where we stand right now. And these are preliminary numbers. But if you turn to the second page of this.
Yes.
And what it does is it basically gives you a rundown by fund about where we're at right now. And even though most activity is recorded at this point, there's still a few items that we might still have to record, some adjustments possibly. So the draw from fund balance could potentially go up or down. So right now we haven't actually recorded the health claims, we haven't recorded the dental claims, because we actually won't know those numbers until the end of August. But in the approved budget currently, we had anticipated that the fund balance in general fund would be pretty close to around 24 to about 24.5 million.
Right.
If the results that we have here bear out, it actually looks like it's going to be closer to 25 million. So what we did is we basically wanted to let you see that's the condition of the general fund. And also we included the other funds just to kind of maybe just go over just very briefly. If you go over to road impact and facilities tax, you'll see they're in a deficit, and we're hoping that during 2012 it will actually hopefully no longer be a deficit. So we know that's kind of what we're looking for on the horizon. And if you keep coming over and you see stormwater and you see that fund balance, in 2012 there were actually some employees that were actually, there were some employees that were actually added to that fund, as well as some additional projects. So that fund balance will probably start coming down a little bit in 2012, but that's the current balance, or that's what we're anticipating might be the final balance. And if you keep coming over it even a little bit more, in hotel motel fund, there actually is in the horizon basically where we'll pay off the conference center debt, and that will actually be in 2013. So right now, until that year, it'll still be paying conference center debt, but come that year, actually that will be the last year of that. And if you keep coming over, if you look at debt service fund and you see that there's $1 million balance, this $1 million is from the property tax that actually was put into that fund. So in a lot of cases, it's because like the variable rate interest, in essence, the amount that we thought would be needed had not been needed. So basically, there could be a decision on the horizon about how to handle those funds. So that's what's in debt service. And the capital projects fund, where you see the 11 million, is if you look at the bond use summary, a lot of this will tie back to that summary, because in essence, we have 2 bond issues that are out there, and this is the outstanding balance on those 2 bond issues. So it's kind of like that's where we stand right now. And the other thing that kind of goes along with it is, even though this is the status report of the financials, there actually are some amendments we would like to maybe present to you that could actually help us to close out the year. And that was actually, I guess, in the packet as well.
Item C.
Yeah, just a couple comments, and Mike hit on it, that I would just go back and emphasize is, first of all, the general fund projecting now to look like it's going to be about $500,000 better off in terms of fund balance than we had projected at budget time. So that's an improvement and a good thing there. The 2 funds that have negative balances, we've been tracking those over the last few years and looking at where we are with those. Those are actually tracking better than where we had those a year ago as well. So we have made real progress there and really expect those to move into the positive side in terms of fund balance within this next fiscal year as well. We're looking to see those happen.
Really good,
Yes.
considering where we were.
Yeah, we were
But
3
road
million.
impact- Yeah, road impact is further in debt than had been a year ago, but boy, that facilities tax is, we've almost got it.
We expect both those to be in the positive here shortly. And this had been part of what we discussed with the auditors last year, is in the position we're in, what was their advice on how to record that and handle that? And the advice then was, hey, as long as you've got a plan that shows that you're making progress addressing it, you can work that plan, and that's what we're continuing to do, and really appear to be a little bit ahead of the game in terms of where we thought we'd be. Especially on facilities tax. But just wanted to add those comments to what Mike had stated before.
And I think the auditor said unless it went over 3 years, there would really probably not be any difficulty with it.
That's right. Based on the amount in the fiscal 12
Right.
budget, these will end up being positive on June 30th of next year. If we get our budget.
On our projections.
Yes,
Yeah.
projecting, and hopefully that's what we're saying a year from now.
Yeah.
Good.
For 3C, the one thing that I guess we were trying to do is hopefully get numbers to you much sooner. And we want to go ahead and maybe even let you see the amendments that we believe will help us to cover all the fund budgets. So if you look at this handout, and actually attached to it is actually the potential ordinance. But what I'd like to maybe highlight are some of the things in the amendments. If you look at the $481,504, it's actually something the board had already approved to be moved. It's basically the facilities taxes from the county that was collected in 2011. And this is actually the formal amendment that lets us move it from the general fund to the capital projects fund. So that's why you see it basically as a revenue, and you'll see it as a transfer as an expense. You'll also note here that there actually is an entry here for some administrative reallocations. Before 2011, budgets were done at a department level basis. During 2011, it actually now is done at a fund level basis. So in essence, what we like to propose is the city administrator be able to do some reallocations so that all the departments can close for the year, but basically the net effect will be zero. So
We'll
that's
stay
how
within the
we make
total
that
fund,
entry.
but there are some departments that go up or down.
Yeah.
And we live within that total budget.
Is that
authority.
So you're moving that around then?
Well, for most, except the general fund, they're close enough that that's really the department there is just really working with it and everything. General fund could be a little bit more problematic, I think, but
And what we thought is that actual administrative reallocation would be actually brought to the board with other administrative actions. So essentially, even though it's not part of the ordinance, it would basically be something that would be brought to the board.
You can, yeah, we'd show it to you, but you don't need to necessarily take action to move dollars within departments, because
I
we're
was gonna
still
say, what do we
living
do?
within the total budget that the board
All right.
approved.
So as long as you're within that budget, then there's no action.
Collectively
that we would
within the
have to take.
fund. Yeah, we'll note it to you, show you the adjustments that are happening within departments, and there are some that we knew were coming, but they sort of offset across departments, and we still live within that general fund allocation.
So when those things happen, will you show that to us at our work sessions, or will we
Well,
get there?
in
or
this
a committee,
case-
at the committee level?
With the departments, I would look at that as really actions taken on behalf of the board.
And
You
then
don't
we'll get-
need to take action.
Right, but
because-
you'll list those, so we will see those
Yeah,
on our agendas?
you can see that, just like we list
Right.
other actions
Okay.
that we take on your behalf.
So just
well,
just
as
for
I
where we're
say,
at.
if you're talking about shifting between departments, though, that's a little bit more problematic, I think.
Not too much.
If
At this point, you're closing out the year.
Well,
For this, but
Right,
yeah,
right.
if we were moving a significant amount of money, and I think we even talked about
Yeah.
that would be something that we would bring to you if we were making any significant adjustment among
Yeah, if
departments.
this is tweaking, so many thousands here and there, I don't have a problem with that, but, as Ian said, if it's between departments and it's significant amount, then you would discuss that with us, and then we'll,
Right.
Yeah.
This is much of
Why?
what we talked about when we were talking about changing that ordinance as far as doing the budgets and making amendments, in that we have budgeted so close on numbers in the last couple of years, and we've added vacancy rates. And when we have a
Yeah.
longtime employee retire, and they have a lump sum in terms of their terminal leave, and they're paid for that, and it shows up, that's not something that we typically budget department by department by department.
Yeah.
It's generally budgeted. So in that case, you could have a department go over a little bit and another one go under. And
Yeah.
that's the level that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
okay.
But that's also a
Good
part
with
of
that.
bringing these at certain times only, bringing the.
Quarterly amendments.
We bring you the
Quarterly
quarterly
amendments.
amendments as well as we go through.
Yeah.
If there's anything
see it.
significant, we'll bring it to you on a quarterly
Good
basis.
with that.
And then, I guess just looking at the rest of it, you'll notice that in a few funds, it's actually where we receive the FEMA funds, because it was the flood that happened in May of 2010, is that correct? Is
Yeah.
basically, we actually didn't receive the money until this fiscal year, so we couldn't call it revenue until now. So we actually now are budgeting those revenues.
And there's still revenue that
Yeah.
we expect to come in this year that from that same event.
And some other things, the board had approved, like in stormwater, some projects, and basically they were able to commence. And you'll notice down here in stormwater, it's just that if you looked at the budget amount, we actually, by starting those projects, need to budget some additional expenditures just to allow that fund to be able to close. So it's just a lot of those kind of things that are in these amendments. It's like you say, this is basically the fourth quarter amendments. So what we would like to request to staff is maybe if this committee could recommend these amendments to the board and basically help us to close out the fiscal year.
Sure.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion further? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Good.
So we talked about A, we talked about C.
C.
We didn't talk about B, though. Russ, do you want to
Sure.
take them through what B's about?
In those early conversations with the auditors, we had actually forgotten that when we did one of the bond resolutions back in 2009, you, the board, authorized $48 million in bonds, and we only issued $44 million. So the auditors asked us, what are you going to do with that extra $4 million? Are you still going to use it? And we thought we'd bring that back to you. We can either do a resolution for you, prepare that would rescind that $4 million in bond authorization, or we can leave it out there in abeyance until we do another bond issue and then add to it. If you do the rescission, then, I mean, you kind of clean up something that's been hanging out there, and you also avoid a statement in the audit report that says that we still have a certain amount of bonds authorized but not issued. So we would recommend that you go ahead and
Just be
let us
cleaner.
prepare a resolution to do that.
Yeah, we wanted your feedback. I think it's good discipline to, when you've done the issue you plan to do, even though you came in under, and ultimately, at some point, we will issue some other debt, we could use that capacity then. I think it's cleaner within a reasonable time period to say, we did what we said we were going to do, we don't need the capacity that we authorized, let's rescind it, and then we start fresh next time we're looking at needing to go out for a bond financing.
So you don't leave that 4 million set where you could actually use it again?
Well,
I mean, or you can't legally?
you could,
Yeah,
and
thank
what
you.
I'm saying is since we did the issuance that we planned on doing at a lower level, let's clean it up and
Yes.
rescind it now, and then come back to whatever the next issue is, and you would grant authority based on what you need to do with that financing at that time.
What if you didn't do that and it just sat there?
It would
And
just-
then you decided to use it in 2 or 3 months down the road?
Well, would you need exactly $4 million
Yeah.
for whatever
So-
project
so-
you're thinking about?
You'd be taking
Probably
some
not.
other action to get to whatever number you get to.
Yeah,
Is there any financial
just wondering.
advantage one way or the other?
yeah, that's what I'm
for
looking
doing
for.
Not really, except again, it takes it out of our audit report as something authorized that we might use, but have not yet used. It just, it cleans it up a little bit. I think, again, staff would recommend that we rescind that.
I move that we rescind the $4 million that unused in this bond.
I'll second it. I still want to know, like Mike asked, there is no financial advantage to keep it
It cleans it up. The
Money-wise?
advantage is, no, I don't think there's any because you're not,
percentage-wise or anything?
oh, no,
Okay.
no. It's
No.
just an authority granted by
Okay.
the board in terms of what we're authorized to issue debt for.
Okay.
And we don't
All right.
have an immediate one that we're doing at this point, and plus, anything else you would choose to do, you're going to have to authorize to whatever that amount is, and it just cleans it up and allows you to kind of move on to the next thing.
So you still have
And-
to actually go out and get that
Yeah.
amount.
So,
Okay,
in
that's
other words,
fine.
it would
I'm
just
good with
look
that.
a little bit better on the
I'm good with
balance sheet.
that.
It looks better on the balance sheet. We're going to be talking to
Yeah.
bond rating agencies in the
It's
next
one less
month.
question
Yeah.
we'll ask.
I'd rather clean it up if we can.
Don't want any hanging chads.
Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with the new government accounting standards or anything at all?
Not at all.
It's not even reflected
Not at
there,
It's just
so.
standard.
Just a good practice.
So I guess our motion is to
Yeah.
recommend rescinding
Yeah,
this.
second.
Okay.
You need a vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
All right. I wanted to bring back an issue we've been working on related to our retiree health insurance program, and I'd ask our team from Human Resources, come on up.
Do you want me to talk about?
Oh, OPEB. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's kind of.
Come on up,
It's a
though.
great, it's a great.
I jumped to 4. I'm sorry.
It's a
We've been
great
jumping around.
segue into that. OPEB is a acronym that's been thrown around a lot. It's Other Post-Employment Benefits. And in our case, it refers directly to the obligation and liability that we have for retiree health insurance and other insurance if there is any, but specifically about the health insurance. And we've done these reports every third year since the accounting standards rule was passed. And this is a preliminary indication from our actuary as to where we are. And if I would ask you to look specifically, and again, this is a preliminary number because until we hear the next topic on our discussion and make some determinations on that, he can't really finish this. But just to take a look at it, at the accrued liability has not changed dramatically over the last 5 years. We're about where we were in 2007, despite the fact that we've lowered the discount rate in terms of the calculation of that. Again, this is just background information, but it's something that you need to know. There is this liability of about $2 million that's out there for unfunded liability on future payments for retiree health insurance. To give you comparisons, our sister city to the north has about an $8 million unfunded liability. Metro Nashville has somewhere between 500 million and $1 billion, depending on what numbers you read and at what time. My point being that ours is very insignificant relative to the liabilities that you read about with other cities.
That's good.
This is going to lead right into
The next item.
Yep.
Which is a big element of that. Shirley, go ahead and take it away.
I'm just going to open it up, but we have Mark Morgan from our consultants group, Cheryl Morgan, and he's going to tell you a little bit about it, but I wanted to frame this with why we are looking at this. Originally, when they set up this in 2001, they put a sunset clause for 2011. As you recall, you all extended it, the board did, through September, so we could finish looking at the possibilities and get a recommendation. But we did set this sunset clause. All of the groups do not sunset, and I will let Tammy address that, but the lower deductible one does. It is up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to decide if they want to let it sunset or to continue, but we do have a recommendation from our consultant. So with that, I will turn it over to Tammy Pitts, who is our teacher.
Thank you. Yes, as you may recall, when we brought this to you earlier, I believe in May, we do currently offer 3 health insurance options to our retiring employees. The first option is the normal early retirement, which is for age 62, those age 62 and who have completed 20 years of service. This plan will continue, and with that, the retiree is qualified to continue their health benefits at the employee rate until they reach the age of 65. The second one, of course, is the one that Shirley mentioned, the special early retirement for ages 55 with 30 years of service to the city. In this one, there is a specific amount that is designated toward the toward the retiree premium. The city pays the first $207.75 toward the single premium and the first $535.50 toward the monthly family premium. Again, this was originally set up to sunset June 30th, but was extended by the board to September 30th. The last plan that is available is the Alternative Retirement Insurance Plan, and that is for employees retiring with 25 years of service regardless of age. It is the higher deductible plan, and the city pays a fixed amount of $125 for single coverage per month and $275 for family coverage per month. And of course, the retiree portion would increase or decrease based upon our renewals. And so with that, of course, we did ask Mark's group, Cheryl Morgan, to review that, and I'll let him present his recommendation.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being in front of you. Nice to meet you all. Taking the time to look at the information that was provided to us regarding the retiree option. We had an independent outside actuarial firm look at this, predominantly because we're looking at another actuary's report, so we want an actuary to give an opinion on the actuarial report. And it's because we're talking about a small population in this circumstance, none of the recommendations are huge windfalls as far as GASB liability or health plan costs would be impacting a dramatic amount. However, it is indicative of what other greater action or future plans might do as far as that liability and as far as health plan costs. In the circumstances here for the city of Franklin, pretty straightforward that the city contributes less for one option over the other, and that is an obvious reduction in the cost there. Within the GASB liability, a reasonable assumption was made that 50% of the people would choose one plan and 50% of the people would choose the other plan. When they don't have that option available, they can't pick it. The new GASB study then would show that that plan no longer exists, therefore they'd pick the lower option and the GASB liability would be reduced. If that kind of election was done on a broader scale, obviously there would be more reduction. Within the health plan costs, it's a higher deductible plan. There's lower future risk brought onto the plan because more costs are quite simply borne by the individual on the plan rather than by the plan itself because of the higher deductibles. Therefore, that plan is reduced and the risk to the plan is reduced. Also, then your future utilization of that plan, typically under high deductible programs, people use them differently. Utilization is reduced. None of these reductions are significant within themselves for this particular segment or population because we're talking about a very small population, 6 people. But they are indicative of future planning if that were to take place and changes that would be made. So we recommend that you do let this sunset because it does, from our discussions, appear to cooperate with what you believe future discussions for the city would be regarding your retiree benefits.
So at the end of this, you still are continuing to provide a health insurance option for those that retire and meet these thresholds. So we continue to provide it, but we now provide it within this one option, which happens to be option 2 within our existing health insurance program. So you're really you would just be allowing the sunset to happen and eliminate the one other choice and option, which happens to be a more expensive one. But you do continue to provide that bridge of medical insurance to folks till they reach age 65.
And this will not affect anyone who is currently retired.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the one we're going to let go ahead and sunset will be the special early at age of 55. So those people now that if they're 55 and retire would be covered under
Option 2.
Option 2.
As long as they had 25 years of service, which would be that. yeah,
Okay.
that group.
Let me also say that this originated in 2001 when there was an early retirement option. So this was implemented to encourage people that had the eligibility requirements to go ahead and retire.
And then option 2, you have, under single and family, you've got quite a difference there. Let's see, the city, if you look back at the retiree, paid $333.25 and $705.04, and you reduce that, it's $146.41, but the other one, well, I guess it's,
Both are less, but it's a
Yeah.
higher deductible
Sure
plan.
is.
So that's
Yeah.
the trade-off
Yeah.
that is happening there.
yeah.
It's a higher deductible and higher out-of-pocket. It's still a good plan. It's what many other
most
companies
cities
and
have.
businesses offer. It doesn't have vision, and the prescription cards, their copays are a little higher. However, it is still a very, very good plan.
What is the deductible? You say
It's
a
$1,000 per
Per
person.
person.
Gotcha.
or
They save that
$3,000
pretty
family.
quickly. just
Well,
in
and
the
that's what
premium
I
difference.
said, the difference in it, Tammy and I talked, and I said, if we explain to our retirees or eligible employees that if they really feel like that's expensive, if they put the difference in the two
Right, put him
in an
on.
account every month,
They'll cover that pretty
they're going to
quickly.
cover that, so.
Yeah, that's true.
And some of it fairly, well, even on the
Feel the
single
sun
person,
setting.
fairly quick.
I'd make one other comment. Sorry, it's not a part of this report, but there's the Tennessee Personnel Management Association survey. It surveys approximately 100 governments within Tennessee of plan designs and those models, and your option 2 that they'd be left with is indicative of the average plan being offered throughout the state of Tennessee for active and retirees. So there's not anything abnormal about this plan and what's being offered.
And there are, what'd you say, 6 people that are eligible right now, but they would have until,
They have until-
Yes, and we are
Yeah.
meeting with them. We tried to meet with all of them today. We had some on vacation and some out, so we did meet with 3 today. I have a meeting with 1 on Monday.
And 2 others early next week, we hope as well.
And they're getting ready to retire?
Well, no, we're not encouraging them. We just want them to be notified. I mean, we're sending it to them, but we wanted to talk to them about it and let them know that what was being presented and that there was a good chance that this would sunset and the other insurance would be, option 2 would be, is what they would be eligible for. We talked to them, we told them that it did not sunset until September 30th. So if they chose to retire, if they wanted to with the first option, they could still do that prior to September 30th.
Yeah, that window's still open for them for another 6 weeks. We wanted to make sure they knew
Yeah.
that and that this was coming through as a
Absolutely.
recommendation for us so that that group could make an informed decision.
That's right.
Sarah.
What is the magic, I mean, I know it was voted on before, but what's the magic about September 30th versus
It-
end of the year
The
or
original plan
something?
said it would sunset, it had a sunset clause for June 30th, 2011.
And we extended
We
that, I remember
extended it for
that.
90 days, and only, the magic number was only that we were asking for a 90-day extension so we could get all of our numbers together and everything going.
Be comfortable with
Yeah.
the advice, the
So I was
recommendation and your opportunity to
We
make
were
a
I
hired,
decision.
don't remember
Con-
why that number, why September was picked to
Well-
extend it to.
Just 3
We
months
were-
for
Just
3 months.
time.
We
We were
were
just-
kind of late getting our consultant in, so we
Yeah.
needed to buy some time, and we
Yeah.
thought 3 months would be reasonable rather than extending it to the end of the year.
So we've essentially used half of that time to do this evaluation, bring a recommendation to you, and then it provides the other half of the time just to know where the decision may be going so folks can make
Yeah.
a decision as well if it affects them, so.
Okay. Good.
Any other questions or comments? Sarah? motion to recommend this?
I move that we allow the special early retirement option to sunset on September 30th, 2011.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
And we are actually going to go ahead and bring this to the work session next week, just because we actually also have another 2 issues related to the pension program and the custodian for the pension. So we wanted to just put those all together because they all relate to our retiree and pension program. And so you will see this again in the work session, but it's helpful to have this from the committee as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You and Shirley coordinated your colors this year.
Almost.
Tammy didn't get the memo. White. The last.
Okay, we're ready for number 5 now.
Is Russ coming back, or did he leave?
Let's go ahead and, if we could, skip up to number 8, just because I think Russ is making a call related to a call he got from Lauren. So just in case it has any effect on what's going on with the refunding, any other information I'd like us to.
We're skipping to what number?
I'm kind of sorry we're doing that.
Oh, yeah.
I looked at this and I thought this is really complicated. I don't know whether.
What, number 7?
Number
But we
8.
can help you bypass a lot of the trouble on that complicated one. We sat through a whole afternoon, didn't we?
Okay, well, let's go to item number 8, which is the discussion of business rules for utility billing. Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Steve, take it away.
Well, thank you. Last month, we came and talked to you about some challenges that were facing us in the utility billing side. These started coming about because when we started through the Hanson billing conversion, one of the charges I had was to look at our code, look at our business rules, and said, do we have any opportunities that prevent us from being able to move to standardize a lot of our business rules? Because as we move to automate these things, we've got to have automated rules. We relied a lot on individuals making decisions to apply how we price, deliver, service certain accounts. And one of the first, I said, last month, I said, we've got a couple of dozen here of the major ones, and what we were looking at was to be able to say, well, some of these probably need to be in the code, some of these should be in business practices, so that we wouldn't want to codify all of these kinds of provisions. I think you're familiar with the league adjustment practice. That's a good example where you codify the fact that you could have adjustments to bills, but you might set up the business rules internally as to how the mechanics might go and what those would be if you chose to go that path. But the first one that you really needed to look at was, and what I'd recommend is looking at, is how do we end up pricing services? And in this particular case, what we have is that we have fundamentally 4 services: water, sewer, trash, and stormwater. There's some other things, but that's really the big thing: water, sewer, trash, and stormwater. Water and sewer are covered in Title 18, trash is covered under Title 17, and stormwater is covered in Title 23. What that says is each of those municipal codes cover their particular provisions, and all 3 of them say that we'll price the services along either 2 lines: residential or commercial. The term is used non-residential in some cases, but it's really the same thing: residential or something other than residential. So we say, well, that's good, that seems easy enough, and we all have our in our own mind as to what is residential and what is non-residential. But the problem is the codes define them slightly different from title to title. What that means is that when we start looking at trying to automate our business rules, that creates challenges. And what's happened is individuals on staff have made decisions about how we price these things, and what that's done is resulted in inconsistencies in how we price things. And inconsistencies in something like applying billing rates really is not a place we need to be. And So what I said, this is an opportunity for us to be able to address those and come forward and say, well, let's try to do this. And let's look at it from a simplistic standpoint. The simplistic standpoint is if we can define one, by definition, everything else is the other. And so what I've come together and saying is that, well, the easiest way to do is let's define residential. And that's on page 2 of this package. But what that says is that we can define residential properties as a property that meets all of the following criteria. It's used as a single-family residential living unit and is owner or tenant occupied as a residential dwelling. Easy enough. Property is classified by the assessor as residential or home belt property. Home belt is a unique classification that the assessor has. There's 4 properties. They're residential properties, clearly residential properties. So the assessor's got it says it's residential, whether it be an individual detached single-family dwelling or a condo townhouse which has got walls that touch each other. They're individually owned by that person and is classified by the assessor as residential. It's served by a single water meter serving a single residential living unit or duplex or triplex. Where that's important is where our biggest inconsistencies have come about are those customers who end up having tenants within that customer handoff point. In other words, they have consumers. An example would be an apartment complex. Those are quickly, but we also have some condos which are served by master meter. Those are mostly some of our older units that were converted from apartments and all that. And lastly is that the occupant, owner, or tenant has a unique utility service contract with us or the water district to provide service. And what that says is that, again, is that if you're served with a master meter, you cannot have the individual contract. We don't have a contract with service if, in fact, a good example is Colony House. Those 52 individuals who own those properties, we don't have a contract with them. We have a contract with their agent, because we have an arrangement with a property management firm for service for Colony House. So that's really what we've ended up with. The master meter applications are the ones that's created that's the most opportunity, because what's happened is that we've treated them basically, if their condo served off a master meter, going back to the Colony House, we'll pick on that, then and they're used for dwelling units, we've charged residential water and sewer. The problem is the code says that they're treated as non-residential for purposes of trash and stormwater. So we end up with some inconsistencies in here. So what we're trying to say is that if we can go to a consistent rule that really follows the assessor's database, we know which ones are served with a master meter, and we can then develop our standard business rules so that as the properties change, or whatever happens with that, we still know that we're pricing those in a consistent manner.
Let me ask a
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
Other condos then would have individual garbage pickup?
The individual condos would be subject to service pricing just like any other detached homes.
But I mean, I'm asking, do they have individual solid waste pickup?
In some cases, yes, ma'am.
Some do, some don't.
I'd be kind of interested to see, understand what you're talking about older conversions.
I do have a listing if you would like to have that.
The older conversions obviously were originally apartments that were not condos.
But
I was thinking about...
Yes, and if they're, remember, if they're master meter, what we'd say is they would not be subject to residential rules. They would be subject to commercial rules.
I understand.
And so under commercial rules, that means if they want to have service with us, they can have service with us. If they choose not to have service with us, they would not be subject to service from us. But if they're individually metered, then just like any other detached home, they would be subject to residential pricing provisions. individuals don't have the option of opting out for trash. And as a single-family detached homeowner, you don't get to choose whether or not you want or to pay for that or
Want the
not pay
service
for
or
it.
not.
And
But
we're
that was-
treating those differently if the walls touch each other. And we're saying, well, we shouldn't do that. Now, what would happen is you pay $15 a month in your home. But then if the walls touch, then they're not subject to that, and they could do that. We could still have them subject to the $15
That's what I'm
fee,
asking about.
but that the service might be provided through a dumpster service, not through an individual container. It's still a trash service, it's still provided by the city, and they're still subject to the fees, and particularly important when in fact the residential waste service is actually supported by the general fund.
So in other words, those people then would have to pay the solid waste pickup whenever they're not paying it now. Is that it?
They're potentially not paying now. We have many who are paying and many who are obtaining services right now.
Well, that would be an interesting thing to look at.
And I do have that listing if you would like
But
that.
still, if we're trying to work out a way to make all of these fit together, it's not just water and not just sewer.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
see, that's where, I
It's
mean,
tricky.
obviously the service,
Yeah.
you know, if it's in your name, you get cut off if you don't pay it. But I'm just seeing here then, maybe people that are not using the solid waste, you know, or perhaps even, I don't know about the condos and or apartments, but I suspect not all of them are served by the city, right?
No, they're not charged, not all of them.
No,
not all of them.
I'm saying
But
they're not
private.
served though, because I know a lot of commercial establishments are not.
Right, they have the opportunity to choose
Yeah,
another
that's
service
right.
provider.
So
For
do you see
example,
what-
with the landing, we do not service.
On the
The
garbage?
landing
The
on
landing.
Moore's Lane,
Okay, okay.
yeah, we don't service them. They have a private carrier, my understanding.
So I see
mean, a private.
there's going to be a lot in here to
Yes, ma'am.
think about.
And it really is, you were very correct when you said that it affects more than water and sewer. Is that it looks like, and I have to say it looks like, you know, how do we get to where we are? And I think that's one of the things that inevitably asks is that we put this billing system in the 95 is when we started that. We started billing for that was water and sewer, and it was our water district only, and that's all we were billing for. We didn't really have to worry about other water districts and what was showing. And then we started billing for trash. And then we started, in 2003, we started billing for stormwater. And as we kept layering on these things, it was like, oh, God, I didn't think, and it was, so we then had to come up with something to do this. And so we've ended up with this situation where it's like, well, I say this, I say that, but together they don't say the same thing. And this moves us to that point. We also had the fact our eyes, opened larger when we brought Mallory Valley in a couple of years ago. Is that Mallory Valley did, what they thought we had indicated to do and following our rules, but they were not necessarily exactly what we would have been doing had we done it in-house. That's really more of the meter multiples discussion, but this really is at the heart of the whole thing, because when we start building our pricing structure, how much we charge a customer, and whether or not they are to receive certain levels and what levels of service they are, that definition between residential and non-residential is at the heart of the whole decision.
Now, what do you mean by levels of service?
Is that the level of service is that, for example, a rollout container. If you're a residential consumer, the customer, you can have once a week rollout service. You pay $15 a month. That's what you pay.
Recycling service.
That's what you pay. And what you end up happening is that, but if you're a commercial customer, a non-residential customer, you can have once a week service, but it's $20 a container. not $15.
Or you could have them pick up a dumpster, right? It's commercial.
That's
And in
different.
commercial, you can have a
Yeah.
dumpster. We can, have a dumpster, and it's often done on a rehab, is that somebody would have a facility done there, and you can do some pickups for that. But routine service is really dictated first by the residential and commercial determination. And as you pointed out, a big consideration too, although it's not germane to that specific one, is the disconnect for non-payment. The whole master metering discussion really, that's a long discussion just in itself.
Oh, yeah. And whenever we're, besides the fact of the cutoff, I see the water and sewer and even the stormwater being reasonable to work the way we're talking about. It bothers me a bit that people would be charged the $15 even if they do not have the availability of a rollout container for themselves. And they're not being charged that now, are they? Or are they?
It depends on whether they've.
I'm talking about for residents.
So this would be,
Well, we've got many that are, and we've got a mixture. And I think a good example is the Franklin Housing Authority. Franklin Housing Authority is currently priced as under residential rules, although by code it says it's not. But that's another. The code says that attached multi-residential units are treated as commercial.
But now some of those are duplexes, aren't they?
I'm talking about the primary housing units where they are the buildings, the large buildings.
Okay.
And in those cases, we serve those with master meter. There's about a dozen parcels scattered out over the city.
Right,
Those are
right.
scattered all out. We have a special agreement with them. They get a 20% rate discount right now for water and sewer under a contract that goes back a couple of decades. But for trash and stormwater, even though the code says that that attached dwelling units are treated as non-residential, and that's what it says, multi-residential are treated as non-residential, which means they don't have to pay. They do have service, and we charge them $15 a can using a multiple account. And stormwater is applied in a multiple based on, again, the number of units. And they're and so there's provisions in there about the fact that that non-residential are based off of total impervious
Right.
surface. And so what's happening is those large apartment complexes and condo developments, what they're doing is that we're not charging them right now based on the common areas for the parking lots, the internal roads, tennis courts, swimming pools.
So what are we charging them for, just the rooftop?
We have a mixture. In some cases, we don't charge rooftops, no ma'am.
No, I meant, if you're telling them about you're not charging for
We have a blend,
parking.
this is again where we have an inconsistency. In some units, we end up charging based on the number of units times a rate that was not authorized by BOMA. But it was a rate that was, and goes back to 2003, that we thought that evidently the intention was for it to be approved by BOMA, and it was a unit rate of $1.83 a unit. But in fact, there is no provision in the code for $1.83 per unit. And so in some cases, we build a number of units times $1.83. And in some cases, we build impervious surface for the whole development. So again, we have an inconsistent application. But these were put in basically a decade ago, and this came about as part of this discovery process about our inconsistencies.
I think discovery would be a good way to describe it. Oh, my.
You know what really might be helpful is to have this in table form, because as you read through it, it's very self-explanatory, but it'd be easier to look at a table that just, here's what it is now, and here's what's happening if it happens if it's corrected. In other words, where I live, I'm on a separate meter, but we also have a homeowners association that has a meter that has to do with irrigation and a fountain we have there. So basically, everybody would stay residential as far as where we live, but the homeowners would then be placed in a non-residential category and pay a different rate on that water. Is that?
Only for the
Only-
fountain.
The HOA.
Fountain irrigation.
Yeah.
Fountain irrigation would be, because
Yeah.
that is a non-residential classification. And is this,
So
what
they're
you're,
that what that is
classified as
also?
residential
Yes, sir.
and
would you like to cover
non-residential.
that was,
Oh, it doesn't matter.
So are you saying at the same time, the mayor's going to be, his place of residence will be a resident and a non-resident?
Well, our homeowners would be what they call fraternal,
Right.
which means that they would pay a non-commercial, I mean, a non-residential rate. So our water bill for that would go up a little bit. And maybe.
Why would
For
that
the
be if you're
irrigation.
on individual meters?
No.
It's a
the water
separate
bill
bill.
For the fountain and
Oh,
irrigation,
okay.
it's separately metered for the homeowners association.
Right, so that would
You
be
would
part
have
of
to
your
pull that out.
Yeah.
The homeowners to use.
So how are you paying for it now?
To our homeowners dues.
Oh, through the dues.
So it would just be a classification thing that's different for,
Classification change. Oh.
yeah. And
minor
we-
change.
Yeah, for that component.
Why would we do that?
Because it's not a residence.
It's non-resident.
It's not going to a home.
Not, yeah, but it's
It's a commercial use.
residential.
It's a non-residential use.
McKay's Mill HOA is a charitable institution, 501c3.
Well, they don't put out a lot of charity.
I'm just, the HOAs are all set up as 501c3s. And so they're not paying taxes on these to begin with, on all of that land that's owned by the HOAs.
The open space.
And, yes, ma'am. And so what we're saying is that all of our charitable groups, which are fundamentally, the HOAs, it's your churches, and we're already charging them non-residential rates now. We charge all of the churches that. We charge the city of Franklin a non-residential rate.
For what?
Water,
what,
sewer.
all the three? All the four?
If they.
No, they don't. Yeah,
if
they do.
We charge stormwater.
They do have that.
We charge, and we charge trash where those areas where the city receives trash service.
Yeah, like their clubhouse.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So they're all charged non-residential rates,
Yes,
But not,
but they're not
the top.
taxed on the open space, you're
No.
telling me, okay? All right. And what are they, how are they classified?
That's another issue.
I
Yeah,
was
I know,
going to
I'm just
say.
trying to understand
this-
that. 'cause
I
I'm
said that
sorry.
this might
Is that
be
what
more
you're looking at?
complicated.
Might need
Yeah.
a special
I'm talking
meeting.
Yeah.
about just a separate graph that shows
It's news
each
to me, I
category
didn't
that
know
you
that.
have listed here.
Summarizes
Small box
this.
graph that summarizes this, and I think it'd be just really quick and easy to look at it, that this is what happens if you're
Yeah.
my situation, or this is what happens if you live in Colony House. And then
Yeah.
it's easier to look at in my mind.
And I
Well,
understand.
that's something new here.
What ends up happening is, as we pointed out, is that because we have inconsistencies from development to development, is that the box ends up saying it depends in terms of what we're doing now. Now, as far as going forward.
That's what I'm talking about, show now,
Oh, what we're
and then
going-
show going forward. And you can pick however many examples you need.
The other
There's too much information.
The other compliment might be to that is how many entities are impacted, who changes in what area, sort of to Alderman Peterson's point of, okay, how many of these attached residential units now are paying for dumpster service and would somehow now get to have rollouts, or the other way around, however that might work.
Some of those.
Who all's impacted, and maybe summarize how many units or some level of magnitude of change, who's being impacted by change?
I can see that not many multifamily would have rollouts.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's not appropriate.
Well, it might be though.
But there might be
I mean,
some.
Mr. Mayor,
how
do you have a
roll
rollout?
out?
Do you have your
Do y'all have a
person?
separate dumpster?
The homeowners contract separately, the homeowners association contracts with a private service,
Okay.
So
which
really-
I've asked them to go to city, but they don't. But the city does our blue bag.
But you're paying double then. You're paying
No,
that
no,
fee
no.
and you have to pay the
I am
city
paying
fee.
double.
Because you don't get
Exactly.
out of that city fee.
I do not, no.
So-
Not asking to be out of it.
So if you're
And to my
individual,
knowledge,
your
yours
HOA.
is the only one
Sorry.
that's that.
I think the homeowners association was concerned with the large trucks driving through Emily
Yes.
Court would be challenged, and so they said, we'd just rather get a private service, and they come in with a very small truck.
I really don't like that. I mean, I don't like the fact that in a situation like that, where it's not appropriate or feasible for our trucks to get through, and then we still charge that
I think it's fair.
resident.
Doesn't matter to me.
because it's a
We're picking
choice
up
for
the blue
you.
bag.
Yeah,
Well, we pick up blue bags, but we're
well,
paying
here's the other
$15 a
thing.
month to pick
I
up the
think
blue
the city
bags.
would get a smaller truck to pick up the garbage, but the homeowners association,
Yeah,
they
that's-
viewed it, they'd rather not have the garbage truck driving through. So, I mean, it's
Oh.
fine.
So they choose.
I'm
that.
okay with it.
And what's happened is,
Okay.
a lot of times on these developments that have gotten clustered,
Yeah.
is that that solid waste has to end up having additional capital requirements in order to meet unique pickup provisions
We
for
have,
those.
yeah, we have already in
And
West
so,
Haven.
and to say that they should be excluded ends up again, when again, those are being subsidized, then it makes it
Yeah,
even
I see.
more of a disconnect.
Yeah, because we've already
Well,
done that in
there's
West
still a
Haven.
lot of aspects to this, though, that need to be
Yeah.
thought about, I think. I mean, you brought up a lot. I read through it kind of quickly, and I thought, but I hadn't thought about all the different possibilities here.
Because didn't we bought a smaller truck that goes out and services parts of West Haven,
Well,
correct?
Yes,
We serve West
Yes, we
Haven.
did. What?
We serve West Haven.
Yeah, but we had to buy a smaller truck for some of their alleys. That
Yes,
we
ma'am.
couldn't get them down. Remember, we had to go out and buy a smaller truck
yes, ma'am.
some years back?
Well, would you like us to bring this back? Off some more information
Yeah.
and maybe
And don't
some
write this
estimation
across
of the
it.
impact or what type of change
Not
happens if
exactly
we
this
look at it?
detailed either, where every apartment's listed.
Well, and I agree.
This is
It's very-
It's all too much.
Maybe we can
That's-
summarize that,
Yeah.
yeah.
do you want it to come back here, or do you want it to go to work session?
Oh,
What would be
please,
your-
no, bring it back here first.
Okay.
I vote.
That's fine with us. If
Because we're.
it's a
we're
smaller
gonna
group,
discuss
you've
it
got
at work
your
session.
head around it a little bit.
Well, you better make a whole hour for it then.
Special work session.
No, that,
No.
More meetings, the mayor goes, no, one more meeting.
Let us try to bring it
Let's try to
back, I
bring it
guess,
back.
into September,
Yeah.
see where we get, and we'll kind of follow this through. as-
Yeah.
And you can get with me, and I'll try to explain to you what I was trying to visualize.
Okay.
And maybe
So
what I'm asking is.
I think
not-
Eric had a good idea.
We'll try to do what
where
you're
you
talking
was
about,
at.
as well as show what's the magnitude of impact, who's
Yeah, the
affected
numbers
by a
there.
change in this definition
Exactly.
across the multiple lines of service that we have here.
Again, if I may, the one reason I want to remind you that we're making you suffer through this, because we're suffering with it as well. We don't want to hurt Steve's feelings.
No, not at all.
But, we're 6 months away from rolling out a new billing program. And it's critical that we have all these decisions made so that we can finish the implementation.
but I want to tell you, we don't want to do something and then say, uh-oh,
We didn't realize.
I mean, even though there
yeah.
are going to be unexpected, unintended consequences anyway, but still, let's see if we can do it the best we can,
Well, then do we have time to wait another month for us to look at this?
Yes.
Because, I mean, really, once you make the decisions about it, then it's
we
going to
can
go the
move
way it
forward.
goes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, that's not keeping anybody from programming it or anything like that. It's just that we've got to figure out, and it is fairly complex. I mean,
Yeah,
well, but there are
once
many-
you could
there are many-
explain it to us, then the whole board will be just
Well, there are many facets to it, though, let's put it that way.
a breeze. Yeah.
Sorry.
Right, well, that'll come back to you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going to be praying for you,
Thanks.
Steve.
What you do?
Jeez. Better you than me.
Okay,
It is
now we're
crazy.
going to
We can go to
back.
5 or 6, I apologize. We
no.
should have gone ahead and done 5 on pension. My mind and eyes were jumping down to 6 on the refunding, so we can easily go back to 5 in pension and talk
That'd
about
be fine.
those couple issues if you'd like.
Okay, we're ready to go back to 5.
Okay.
and then
If you're
over-
ready to go back to 5, let me just preface 5 by saying that about 10 months ago, the pension committee agreed to put all of the services that we have out for bid, if you will. Some of it's RFP, some of it'll be RFQ. And the first one that we tackled was the services that we engage a bank for. And what the bank has been doing is holding the securities that we own, which is the custodial service, and also writing all of the retiree checks. And that's part of the beneficiary payments and part of doing that. And you have a memo from Brian where he has gone out and done a solicitation for proposals, and we've gotten that in. And one of the issues that came up, let me see if I'm doing this in the right order then.
It says 5 and 5A, but
5A is really the,
really B.
Come on up, Brian.
It's really B, isn't it?
yeah,
Maybe not. Maybe it's the other way around.
yeah, it's in the right order. 5A is the actual custodial agreement. We did go through a process with the pension committee to review the proposals on that. My packet doesn't have the memo in it, I don't think.
I don't
Does it?
either.
Okay.
It was
Sorry about that.
online.
Let me say to you.
Did you get that afterwards?
Could I say something? Whenever we got our packet, some of the pieces were not in there, and they did not come out until the next day.
Here it is. It is here.
And the thing is, we should be notified when that happens, because I was here the next day and just picked up again, but really, we need to know to go back and check our.
Right, we should do that. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that memo did come out a little later than,
There were 3 pieces.
yeah, and I had it here, but it's in the back. So, yeah, what 5A is essentially that consideration to move forward with an award for a bank essentially to provide the custodial services. We went through a process, had 11 submissions. The top group presented to the pension committee. They spent about 3 hours last Monday on August 8th going through those and hearing those presentations. And that committee made a recommendation, but we also wanted to bring that through the Budget and Finance Committee as well. And what the pension committee recommended was U.S. Bank, who happened to also be the low-cost proposer from this, and a companion to that motion to recommend that entity from the procurement process was also a amendment in the pension plan itself about how we state the responsibility of the custodial relationship or the trustee relationship. So there's kind of 2 components that sort of move together with this.
But not. So say that again, because that was important.
So, yeah, and that's the last page of your original packet, which essentially amends the trustee definition. And right now, the trustee or administrators are defined as 3 specific positions: the mayor, the city administrator, and the human resources director. And both our pension council and our city attorney have recommended that we change that to just make the city the trustee, the city entity the trustee, as opposed to individuals or individual positions. Because in effect, you would end up there anyway. If there was ever any action, it would really be ultimately come back to the city. Those 3 positions are acting in official capacity on behalf of the city. We always make the motions and actions that we make as a board to amend the pension program, to take the steps that we take in appointing a custodian and in making investments and all the various decisions that are made. So that was seen as a pretty straightforward amendment, but made sense to make as we were doing this and entering into the custodial relationship with the the new entity that is being recommended or selected in this process. And this would happen January 1. This would be a little bit of a change in the relationship with the trustee entity. Right now, it's a directed trustee relationship with our existing bank, SunTrust. This would really move it to a custodial relationship. Russ can probably describe that maybe for you in terms of the differences, and went through that with the committee a little bit. It's a distinction that has lost a lot of difference. The difference really doesn't exist so much anymore. At least in the couple years I've been working with it, it really feels like we're in a custodial relationship anyway, and we're paying for a premium for it and really not getting much additional service or benefit from that, in my opinion. But I'll let Russ describe the specific differences, but and Shirley can chime in too. I think has some perspective on it as well. So.
What Brian and our consultant did in the request for proposal was to ask the proposers, what in your opinion is the difference between a custodial arrangement or a directed trustee? And although the answers were somewhat across the board, some of them said there's no difference at all, and some of them said there's a huge difference. And even in the interviews with the finalists, they said that. But it all tended to boil down to really two things. They have a fiduciary responsibility for some of the decisions that are made. And they agree that there's a certain level, or what they call a standard of care, involved in looking after our assets. And I think it's fair to say that all the custodians agree that the standard of care that they deliver as far as managing the assets and looking after our account they're going to give us their best shot in order to keep our business and do things correctly and keep us from suing them. The question is, do we really need that additional layer of fiduciary responsibility? And as Eric was saying, over the last several years, what we've found is that they're more or less kicking things back to our pension attorney and our city attorney, and frankly on the committee itself as far as responsibility. And they're really not taking a whole lot of responsibility, if any, on their own anymore. Their contract that we renewed a year ago.
When we renewed it, we went from discretionary trustee to directed, and I think that
made a lot of
was a lot of difference. Originally, in years back, they would be discretionary, and they would decide if it was a good investment, and not so much anymore. They
Plus the
want that
landscape,
responsibility.
the landscape has changed too, in that you've got a financial advisor working with the committee. The committee is engaged in evaluating proposals as well. And then it's ultimately coming to the board with recommendations and information to make decisions. So you've got maybe a more different elements of guidance and professional advice throughout this process that maybe you didn't have years and years ago.
We have a really good financial advisor and good money managers that the financial advisor looks over, and then it comes to the committee and to you also. There's a lot more depth now.
I would suggest that the way the committee does it is probably more intense than the way the trustee does it.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason that we would go to the new arrangement, the
In
new
fact,
relationship.
Exactly.
Because it would be more
Right there.
oversight.
Do we need to say anything further about that, or, now
Well,
let's see, would this
need
be
to
in
make a
two
motion
pieces
to-
then?
You can do it in two pieces. This is another one. Again, we put this on the work session just because of the reach of it, that we felt it probably made sense to
Yeah.
have a full board work session
Yeah, probably.
in advance of the vote. But it really is two actions. You're talking about the award to the custodial bank, and then the amendment to the plan itself to provide that change in definition to the full city.
Well,
It's okay to say U.S. Bank, isn't it?
U.S. Bank
US
is,
Bank.
yeah.
Well, that's fine. I make a recommendation that we accept the proposal from U.S. Bank and the amendment
I think that
as
would be
written.
wouldn't it?
Custodial,
Yeah.
custodial loan.
That
Anything, Brian, to
Second.
May I?
add? No worries.
Second.
There you go.
I'd just like to point out that the City Attorney Shauna Billingsley and the pension attorney are working with the legal counsel from U.S. Bank still in negotiating a draft agreement that memorializes this new arrangement. We don't have that ready for you. There was a document in your packet, but that's a very preliminary document. The final document has not yet been hammered out and is not yet ready to present to you for your review. We hope to have that hammered out on Monday of next week in time for you to have it for your consideration the following day on Tuesday evening.
And even though we placed it that way, there's not a huge rush. We wouldn't make this transition till the first of the year, calendar year anyway. So we've got a little bit of time to stage it and get it ready. But we were trying to act in a timely manner with the advice of the pension committee, lead right into this committee, then go to the board. So
But would it be better to wait another 2 weeks?
it's on your agenda. We're still working on this, but I just wanted to let you know there's not necessarily a time crunch to do this. So if your comfort level or the comfort level of the board on Tuesday is that we ought to give it more time,
We wouldn't necessarily have to meet with it, I mean.
Yeah, we can bring it back to the board.
Just have it, bring it back to the board
If
when
you're
it's
not
ready.
comfortable, but I just wanted to let you know that
I think it's ready for us to pass on
Yeah.
Yeah.
to the
we-
work session.
Conceptually, at least.
Conceptually.
In principle,
Yeah.
our motion is to go ahead and do
Accept
this.
it.
But if
Go ahead.
but you know.
There's not a rush on this one.
Okay.
Really.
So we're just saying that we're, in principle, we agree to this
Yep.
and the recommendation of the
Yeah, he seconded it.
award
Yeah.
to the bank. Is that
Right,
okay?
and as the amendment,
Okay.
as stated.
And to the amendment is
As
stated.
stated.
I do want to thank Brian. He really did a tremendous amount of work on this.
This is a big job.
It was a big job.
All the computer circuits were working.
He tried to kill us with all of that.
Yeah.
I was on the selection process, so it was a fun afternoon.
Or a fun week getting ready for the
Yeah,
afternoon.
there wasn't enough coffee or water, either one. Make it easy.
It was a test of endurance.
Okay, so we're just voting on the motion to, okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Now,
much.
do we also need to change the wording in the,
Oh, well,
is that a
That'll come
separate
back.
issue?
I think,
What's that on the?
I think that was part of Beth's motion.
I think in
Amendment.
principle, we
Yeah.
agreed with it.
Yeah.
The-
We'll bring forward the final
Yeah.
agreement when it's
Right.
worked out
If
amongst the
it's-
attorneys,
yeah,
but
if
it's
not
Yeah.
ready.
it's taking a little longer than
Yeah. That'd
we
be
thought.
Okay, number 6, item 6, report on the bond refunding.
Really, 6 and 7 go together, and if I may, we just wanted to keep you abreast of the items that are going on, and you have a calendar that's been prepared by PFM as far as the competitive bond sale to do the refunding of the $20 million variable rate issue that we have from the Tennessee Municipal Bond Fund, of which approximately a little under 19 million is left outstanding. You have the letter of approval from the state. We've gotten that back. And you now have, which is under caption 7, the resolution prepared by Bass Berry to go ahead with this. There are still a couple of blanks in there as far as prior loan agreements that we'll have all of those blanks filled out before Tuesday's meeting. And I was all prepared to tell you, we have the car loaded and we're ready to go on vacation.
There's some late breaking.
And in today, Bob's a proposal from one of our banks that we do a lot of business with, actually quoting a direct loan rate that is superior, meaning less than, not more than, what PFM estimates we would get in a competitive sale if we were to go today. So that's why I left for a moment. We were running the numbers because all of this happened around 2:30 this afternoon, and we've gotten that back. So our plan, unless something changes, is still to move forward with this. We just wanted to keep you, again, informed on where we are on this. We do have interviews with rating agencies set up, and we would have to change those if we shifted gears and went with direct loan. But if it is determined by our financial advisor that we might save some money by doing it that way, it would save a tremendous amount. I mean, the interest rate quoted is lower, and we would be able to avoid some cost of ratings and official statements and a lot of things that go into a competitive sale. So they were tied up in rating calls all day today, and I was only able to get a cursory number back from them, but we're to talk first thing in the morning and find out and if there's a better way to do this. If so, we would come back to you.
Well, what's the timetable on that?
Yeah.
I mean, that rate's not going to stay there forever, so how long is this?
Well, the competitive sale is the log jam, if you will. I mean, that's what takes so much time, because you have to put out a preliminary official statement, you have to do the bond ratings.
And that's this whole calendar.
That's the whole calendar.
Yeah.
That carries us really all the way into September.
In October?
Well, to close,
Or
but
to
we
close.
would sell
End of September,
sometime
I
in
think,
mid-September. If we were to decide on Tuesday night instead to go in a different direction, we could lock the rate immediately. And that, too, presents somewhat of an advantage. If you remember when we were talking about going through the bond fund for a direct loan, the advantage that they had, there were several disadvantages, but the advantage that they had was that it was a known quantity as far as the rate.
But we're looking at definitely lower than that, aren't we?
Significantly lower than what the bond fund
Yes.
opportunity had been that we looked at before.
Right.
And like Russ said, it's right in line, if not a little below, the assumptions we were making about what competitive sale would deliver. So it's a very viable option that we want to run some numbers on and come back as quickly as we can. I don't know if we have any deadlines yet provided by the bank or what, but we'll.
Well, I think right now the rate will change a little bit each day,
Okay.
but once if we decided to do it, they're agreeable to lock that rate until we can do the closing.
When would they?
And it is a fixed rate for 15 years.
15 years.
15 years fixed rate.
When would they, but that's my question, when would they lock that rate?
When we tell them. that
Whenever
we're-
we say yes,
we're
do it.
prepared to
Because
engage.
I think we're going to see them go up in September.
Well,
I mean, from
that's why we
everything
brought
that I
you the
just read in
choice.
the Wall Street Journal versus all this other stuff the other
Well,
day.
but
I'm
everything
gonna
is
get
so,
Oh, my
everything is
gosh.
so uncertain though now in
It's
in
going
the
to go up in
economy.
September, you watch it.
You know, but let me, but wait.
It could also be lower.
So now,
It could be.
this
I
doesn't
bet
have
you
any
don't.
bearing
I bet it's
on
gonna go
the
up.
amount
I'll take
that we
notes.
can.
No, it would, again, if you remember the bank loan, we were doing apples to apples at
What is
15
it,
years.
15 years?
In order to, because
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's the limit that banks can go in a modern
Oh, yeah,
environment.
right.
The proposal that we sent to the state and got approved was to match exactly the maturities we have now, which is 18 years. But what we would do is we'll match 15-year competitive sale against 15-year bank rates, and whichever is lower, well, we'll bring them back to you and let you decide if it's worth going to a lower rate.
Does that tie our, one of the issues I thought I remembered was it ties your hands as far as
Yeah.
some
This is
future.
non-bank
This doesn't.
qualified. And
Non-bank
that's
qualified.
the difference.
The other one did not.
The other one
This keeps all your
required us to be
The other
bank
one-
qualified.
Gotcha.
You know,
This gives us
the
more
earth has
movement.
moved
Makes me
as far as
Yeah, this-
banks
This
are
is better,
concerned in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
Since we were talking about this a couple of meetings ago. So they're having trouble placing their money where they could earn something on it. And they're looking to top credits like ourselves, where they can place money, and they're willing to go 15 years at very low rates in order to do that.
Let me ask you something about also a bigger picture. You know, because it's not just because we were planning to go out and issue bonds that there had been concern about our bond rating. It wasn't that our rating from the rating agencies wasn't just dependent upon the fact that we were getting ready to go out to issue some refunding. And so what I'm asking is, what would the rating agencies look at this like if we just went to a bank loan versus a competitive
Well, we were asked to prepare for a rating review at the time that Moody's had put us on a watch
Yes.
because they were thinking
Yeah.
about reducing the federal government's AAA. They have now affirmed the federal government's AAA. Standard & Poor's didn't,
No.
but Moody's, who were really the ones looking at us. So when they affirmed the AAA for the feds, they also took us off watch.
But wait, did they not say, though, in that letter that they would be looking at these cases individually? I believe they did.
While we were on watch.
But-
I mean, they specified
I thought
whatever
they-
it was,
I thought
300
they said,
cities.
but they would be looking at them individually later?
Well, I think,
That's the way I read it.
well, in a way, they're always
always
looking
do
at
that.
Oh, of
us.
course, of course.
But the urgency is gone, and we have spoken with them, and if we were not doing a refunding, we would not be doing a rating review with Moody's.
Right, right.
Now, Standard & Poor's might be a different circumstance,
Well, see.
because they have downgraded a number of credits below the federal government level, but almost entirely because of the connection to the federal government.
Yeah.
You know, agencies that depend on the
Right,
federal government for money, housing agencies and things like
But
that.
still, you know, as I say, I'm just asking about
Mm-hmm.
the bigger picture and how that would be looked upon by the rating agencies,
But
I
it
guess
said
I would
like this,
say.
like you said, though, that urgency that we
Yeah.
were under the other week is gone.
Well, from one of them.
Yeah.
If I can give you a glimpse of the way I look at it, if, given the current circumstances, if we weren't doing a refunding and we didn't want to hurry to get to market to take advantage of the low rates,
Right.
I would not set up a rating review now. I would wait until October or November, when we have audited numbers that we can share with them. Because as you saw from the earlier part of our agenda, we had a good year. It's about time we had a good year. But it's a vast improvement, I think, over FY10 or FY9. And right now, the rating review that we will hold with them is going to be entirely based on FY10 numbers. You know, I would rather have we'll share the 11 numbers with them, but we have to keep saying they're unaudited.
Yeah.
I would rather, given, you know, a free choice, I would rather wait a month or two and then sit down with them. We actually have invited Moody's to come the third week of October, when they're going to be here for a conference, a state conference. And we're trying to organize a three-way review with Brentwood and Williamson County and Franklin, and a site visit, if you will. Not a review, but we'll drive them around and show them the things that are happening in Williamson County that don't seem to be happening elsewhere. And that would be my preference.
And we do that periodically. We have over the last several years. Just we take that opportunity to show them what's really going on if they're here for something else, and had that opportunity to just sort of tell our story a little more. I think the question is a good one. I would that Alderman Peterson asked, that I would pass on to PFM just to say, is there
Right.
any
Oh, that's a good-
downside
Yeah.
to us changing
That's a
course
good
right
point.
now? I don't know that there is. I think they get what's going on out in the markets and what banks are trying to do, as well as what we're trying to do. And so I don't know if on its face it does, but let's ask the question and see if there's any other unintended consequences related to looking at this. We'll run the numbers as well and look at how this comes out, but it's a real viable option.
I was gonna
And
say,
so
that's pretty good.
something for us to think about, and it's a little bit of it'll change every day, I guess, at this point. So we'll just keep an eye on it and try to give you some more to consider as quickly as we can.
So if we go with this direct, with the bank, really our rating is not in.
We don't have to go through the whole process.
We don't have to
Does
get re-rated.
PFM see any revisions in what they were estimating our competitive
Yes.
rate would be?
Yes, it's come down, and that's why I'm saying this bank rate was low, and what I left the room to get was PFM's analysis of what, if we
The
matched
competitive
up
rate,
today, what would the competitive sale do? And there's about 8 basis point difference, which is, over a long period of time, that's a considerable number.
And so we need to refresh that whole analysis
Right,
based on
right.
what they would expect competitive sale to generate now versus this now lower number with a direct loan. And we'll try to play it out for you, one of the benefits of doing this too is we're shortening from 18 years down to 15
Right,
years,
which is
which is
good.
another plus.
Which is
So
good.
it's just something to consider, and we'll weigh all those elements, just like we did a month or so ago.
Oh, okay, now let me ask then, what about from the comptroller's office? That part wouldn't be affected, right?
We would have to do that again, but again, that can be done fairly quickly, and the bank has offered to lock the rate once we make a decision. That would give us enough time to do all of those little things that would be required.
We won't need the comptroller letter before they would lock the rate,
Okay.
so that helps.
And they were saying about an amendment on this, even if it had expired, but this would make it come quicker, which
It
would
would.
seem to, would make it better. But it really didn't take a long time to get that anyway, did it?
They turned it around very quickly, and we're very
And since
appreciative
they've
of that.
and since they've just looked at it, that might also make it a quick
Well,
turnaround, perhaps. I don't
They're,
know.
we're not the only ones that are thinking ahead and refunding variable rate, so they're anxious to see that happen as well.
So we would just want to push this on.
Go ahead and take action like we're
Okay.
doing the
Okay.
competitive sale, but we'll continue in a parallel track to look at this other opportunity. I think that's the best way
So
to
this
go.
would really be at 6 and 7 together?
The only
It's
action
really
is
seven.
seven.
6
okay.
is really just immaterial
Okay.
about where we are and
Okay.
communication we've got.
Okay, so number 7, recommend moving forward on this? Is there,
Yes.
Yeah.
and a second?
Second, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just
Any other
looking to see what
discussion?
else it said there. Yeah, I'm
All in
good.
favor, say aye.
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 Okay, and we're going to push 8 over. So in number 9, we have reports.
Just the general
Regular
reports for the
Yeah, I
month.
saw that. That's pretty good.
Okay, so we're just accepting that.
How we doing,
Sales?
gas hedging?
Yeah.
Well, regrettably, we saved another
Keep saving money.
20,000 this month.
Incredibly.
When you say that, it
That
means you're
means-
spending it
That means
someplace
we had to
else.
spend 30 to save 20. But, the rates have continued to hold up now. Effective in July, I mean, the one thing I would point out, if you notice, is that our hedge price has gone up. You know, the hedge that we had that was
Yeah,
so
before.
fabulous last year expired in June.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and then why
But
did,
thankfully, we worked it ahead and we went ahead and locked that. Now, there was a tremendous drop in commodity prices today. And I haven't gotten the last version of where oil hit, but sometimes that doesn't affect.
I was going to say, has it made that, is that
Necessarily.
much difference
Contracts.
in our at the pump?
But we do have standing orders in for one gas contract and I think 2 diesel contracts to go ahead and lock at rates that were currently, as of yesterday, almost 20 cents below what the asking price is. So we're just hoping that it dips low enough where we can pick up those contracts.
And we do want to say that the building permits for the year were definitely higher than our projections for the
They
year,
were.
which was good.
is
The road impact
wonderful.
fees, about the same, but also the facilities tax was much better than our projections
Yes,
on that. And so
Account for
that
that.
helps
making
us.
up some ground.
Because, that's right, because
Does,
it's,
do those reports on the construction activities, or do you find those
yeah,
helpful?
I like
Yes.
those.
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, thank
it
you.
tells us where we are on that.
Yeah, we
and-
really need to
And as I say, good to
keep up
see
with that.
revenues higher than projected.
Yeah.
I would just caution that on a month-by-month basis, it's really hard to
Oh,
predict
sure.
when these things come in, but
Right.
Oh.
over the course of the year, it becomes meaningful.
You do have the full year on the fuel hedge, so we did
Right.
save $204,000 over the last fiscal year through that program, so,
Yay.
yeah, it's a good
It
thing.
helps.
Well, is there any other business, or is that it?
I'm good.
There's a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Aye.